We're going to do everything we can to help support every student as they seek to take that next step.
One of the things that people are talking about is schools and schools getting together their extended learning plan for the state. And I wanted to see what some of the bigger districts are doing in our area. So I turned to the Troy School District and Dr. Rich Machesky, who joins me now. How are you, Dr. Machesky?
I'm well, thanks, Christy.
Yeah, and full disclosure, this is the district that I grew up in, and then I also have kids in the Troy School District right now. And Rich, if you could just go ahead and give us a sense of what it's been like in terms of what you've had to take into consideration over the last 3 weeks as this world has virtually changed in education.
Yeah, it absolutely has. It's caused us to pivot significantly in terms of how we meet the needs of our students. 3 weeks ago, when this first started, we were fortunate in that we took a day prior to school closing. We got our teachers together and they did tremendous work in terms of putting together a plan that we used for the last 3 weeks. Turns out the plan that we used over the course of the last 3 weeks is not going to differ too much from what we're going to do moving forward. But some of those real significant components of that plan, I'd say there's three significant components. The first is making sure that we have that we're paying attention to the social and emotional needs of our students. So it's about that daily contact. A daily touch point for students is, from our perspective, the most important thing that we're going to do. We recognize there's no way we're going to replace face-to-face instruction in the classroom on a daily basis. That's just not going to happen. But what we can do is make sure that every student in our school district knows that there's a caring adult on the other side of whatever technology that they're using who wants the best for them and is there to help support them. I'd say that's first and foremost. The second is the academic component. We have to keep kids' minds engaged. So we're engaging in their minds. And then the last piece is I think, is also, it's about kind of the extension in enhancement, if you will. We want kids to not just be doing academic work. We want them to, where possible, be outside playing, doing creative things. I mean, having fun, the degree to which they can.
What has been some of the feedback from your teachers, from the staff, and saying either being overwhelmed or not being overwhelmed, or what some of the pitfalls that they have encountered in trying to maintain that connection and maintain, having enough things for the kids to do that will continue to kind of help their development along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as you might expect, it runs the gamut in terms of those teachers who are very proficient with technology, utilizing technology in their classroom, for them to jump into a platform that is virtual, for them was fairly simple. For others who rely upon more traditional means for instruction, this has been more of a challenge. And I think we also have to really keep in mind, and this goes for every teacher across the state of Michigan and probably the United States. Teachers have lives too. They have their own children. They have their own personal issues that they have to attend to. So they're managing their students on the other end, as well as they're managing their families and what's happening in their own home. So the great thing that I've heard from our teachers is that they're supporting one another. And as much as they're making the necessary contacts on a daily basis with kids, they're reaching out, they're supporting one another. We've got great community support. By community, I mean the school community, from our principals, our building level administrators, to our larger school community. So it's about supporting the kids, but it's about supporting yourself. And we find that the Troy community is just outstanding with respect to that.
And I do want to talk a little bit about the community support, which has gone beyond the classroom and beyond curriculum. But let's talk a little bit about the extended learning plan that you are going to be revealing, I guess, at the end of the week. Can you give us an idea of a little bit of framework?
Sure. So as you say, we're gonna roll this out at the end of the week. We're gonna actually spend 3 days we're on spring break right now. When we come back next week, we're gonna spend 3 days with the teachers in professional development. We're gonna go over that plan with them. But the plan is essentially going to look similar to what we have been doing, in that we're going to have daily touch points with students. And so but the key for this is that it's going to be new learning. We're going to move from enhancement to new material. So teachers will be rolling out new material for students. Of course, it's going to look different at the elementary versus the middle and high schools, but there's going to be daily class schedule. Of course, it'll be skinny down. There'll be a daily schedule that will be provided for what that learning is going to be for that given day. And then there will be opportunities for students and parents to touch bases with teachers if they have questions or concerns. So it's a matter of, it's a combination of online learning and at the same time, it's a combination of potential face-to-face with a teacher should a student need additional support. And of course, it's going to look different from elementary to middle to high school.
Yeah, from all the grades that span. You know, in Michigan, we talk so much about achievement. We talk so much about test scores, talking about where things rank and where we need to go from here. How does this figure into, do you think, kids' learning development over the next year? Parents are concerned about applying for colleges. They're concerned about being left behind. What can you talk to parents specifically about their concerns about their kids falling behind?
Sure, and that's a great question, because that is certainly a concern we've been getting. So I think it goes back to something I said before. There's no way that what we're going to do over the course of the next several weeks is going to replace what would have occurred in the classrooms. And so what we're asking teachers to do, and I know they'll come together and do this, is identify the essential elements that are necessary for students to know moving forward in each of the either grade levels or classes that they're teaching. And we're going to identify those essential elements, and we're going to create learning around those essential elements. And then we're going to provide credit for those students that successfully complete that work, and we expect that majority of students will. But beyond that, we know that come fall, we're going to also have to backtrack a little bit. So let's use math as an example. If I'm a student in Math 7 this year, there are going to be some essential elements that we're going to focus on that would have been taught in second semester Math 7 over the course of the next few weeks. We realize that there may be some students that miss some of that. So there's going to be a combination of opportunities potentially over the summer for students to engage. But more importantly, when we come back and that student is now in Math 8, we know that teacher is going to have to take some time to reinforce some of those skills that the students may not have mastered at second semester grade 7. So it's incumbent upon us to have a plan in place to help support the students as they make the leap to that next grade level, that next course, if it's algebra to geometry and so forth. And I think the other piece from a college standpoint is to recognize that colleges also understand what's going on here. Our counselors have been in contact with our college admissions officers. They fully recognize that there are students that are going to have, there's a portion of their transcript that's going to look a little different. They recognize that, and they've already indicated that that's okay, that they're making adjustments for that. So I think the key for our folks is to know that our team has this well under control, and that we're going to do everything we can to help support every student as they seek to take that next step, whether it's kindergarten to first grade, or whether it's 11th grade to 12th grade, or whether they're moving on to university. We're going to do the best that we can.
I can only imagine that the conversations that are happening among administrators throughout the Southeast Michigan area, have you been able to kind of trade some best practices and ideas with other districts? Obviously, you're a big district. You have a lot of connectivity in terms of internet access, lucky in that way. But are you sharing some information and some things between districts?
Yeah, that's absolutely. And we're fortunate in Oakland School. We have 28 districts in Oakland County. We are on calls regularly with one another. So we have 2 regularly scheduled calls weekly with our Oakland Schools counterparts. But beyond that, we're on regular calls with our Tri-County counterparts and those individuals that we have, of course, relationships with across not only Southeast Michigan, but Michigan as a whole. For instance, I was on a town hall meeting with the governor and her people yesterday. There were 400 plus superintendents on that call. And although the governor didn't stay on the entire call, her aides stayed on the call to answer important questions for folks. So we've got a strong network of superintendents across the state. We're supporting one another. We also have organizations that are helping us support getting the answers to the important questions. We're helped, for instance, in Oakland County, we're sharing our extended learning plans with districts around us so that we can have some continuity, but we can also, where necessary, support surrounding districts. They may not have the same level of resource that we're fortunate to have here in the Troy School District.
You know, I think what's one of the things that we've seen come out of this, and we know inherently that schools are a touchstone for our community, but I think seeing it play out in the last couple of weeks, not only with the communication with kids and teachers and parents, but what you have had to do to mobilize, I think, to help members of the community, whether it's continue to do hot meal service, lunch service for families. And I just saw that the district was able to give supplies to Beaumont. Talk to me a little bit, Rich, about that connection with community that the district has, and maybe how we've seen it more apparent than we ever have before in these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting that in time of crisis, you find other ways to occupy yourself, and really you sync back to what's most important. And really, when we think about this whole situation, what's most important is caring for one another. And that's where I think our community and communities certainly around us have stepped up. And we are seeing the best of people right now. So in terms of gathering supplies that are just sitting in our classrooms, for instance, and not being of use, gathering all those up and being able to share those with Beaumont, the folks on the front lines that need that. Being able to mobilize our food service folks, as well as our transportation contractors, to, on a daily basis or 3 times a week now, deliver meals to students and families. And we're doing that. And what we're seeing are families, not just families that are may have taken advantage of free and reduced lunches on a regular basis, but other families coming out. We're not asking questions about who should or shouldn't. It's anybody that comes has access. And that is that's something that and we're using volunteers to help support that. And so I just think this has been such a great opportunity for us to bring out the best in those around us, and we're going to continue to do that over the course of the rest of the school year. Gleaners has stepped up. We've got a Friday program at one of our elementaries wherein we're giving out over 200 meals and necessary supplies on a Friday that will help sustain families over the weekend. And that's not just families here from Troy. We've got families coming from Clawson, from Royal Oak, that we're supporting. And so it's really about a community coming together.
All right, I guess what would your last message be to all of those students out there who are maybe grieving the loss of being leaving in place? They won't be able to go back to that same classroom they left one day, and they're not coming back. But going forward with the new learning model that you're going to be bringing out in the next week, what would you say to them?
And I'd say if somebody asked me what keeps you up at night, I'd say that's what keeps me up at night, is the fact that this has been such a sudden change for so many kids and families. We can't set aside the fact that families are seriously impacted by this. So that said, I would say to our students that we will get through this together. That crises like this help make us stronger. We are learning so much more about ourselves through this process, both as a district, how we can step up and help support every family in our district. And I know our families are learning more about themselves. And I'd say this is also an opportunity to disconnect to some degree where possible, disconnect from the social media race that we are on, it seems, on a daily basis, and really reconnect with what's important, which is our families and our friends, the degree to which we can still be with our friends. I just think this is such an opportunity to do wonderful things. I know that our kids will be successful, and what they need to know is that there is a strong team behind them in the Troy School District supporting them, that we will make sure they have everything they need to progress further. And all of those folks that have missed out on sports, there will be another sports season. Those that didn't get an opportunity to have Mary Poppins on stage, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we provide that opportunity for those students. So we know that those are important components to a student's school life, and we're going to do everything we can as a school and as a community to regain that as we come back to some sense of normalcy.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the time, Dr. Rich Machesky. He's the superintendent of the Troy School District. Thanks for everything that you're doing, and thanks for filling us in on what you're working on, and be well.
Thank you, Christy. You as well, to the family.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.